As the sun set over the sleepy town of Millville, an eerie silence descended over the streets. The wind whispered through the empty alleyways, and the few remaining residents huddled inside their homes, afraid to venture out after dark. One man, however, was not afraid. His name was John, and he was a paranormal investigator. He had come to Millville to investigate a series of strange disappearances that had occurred over the past few months. The townspeople were convinced that something supernatural was at work, and John was determined to get to the bottom of it. He spent his first few days in Millville gathering information from the locals. They told him of strange sightings in the woods, of eerie voices that whispered in the night, and of a mysterious figure that lurked in the shadows. Undeterred, John set out to investigate. He explored the woods, searching for any sign of the supernatural. He visited the abandoned house on the outskirts of town, rumored to be haunted by the ghosts of its former occupants. He even spent a night in the town cemetery, hoping to catch a glimpse of a ghostly apparition. But despite all his efforts, John found nothing. He began to wonder if the townspeople were just imagining things, if there was nothing supernatural at all. That all changed one night, when John was awakened by a strange sound outside his window. It was a low, guttural growl, like something animalistic and hungry. John got out of bed and cautiously approached the window, peering out into the darkness. What he saw chilled him to the bone. Standing in the street outside his window was a creature unlike anything he had ever seen before. It was tall and thin, with skin as white as bone and eyes that burned like fire. Its limbs were long and twisted, like the branches of a gnarled tree. And it was staring straight at him, its gaze unblinking and intense. John stood frozen, unable to move or even breathe. The creature began to move towards him, its movements slow and deliberate. John felt his heart pounding in his chest as he tried to back away. But it was no use. The creature was upon him in an instant, its cold fingers wrapping around his neck. John felt a sharp pain in his head, and then everything went black. When he came to, John was lying in a dark, damp place. He couldn't move, couldn't see anything. He felt a sense of panic rising in his chest as he realized that he was trapped. Then he heard a voice that whispered in his ear. It was soft and soothing, like the voice of a mother singing a lullaby. But there was something sinister about it, something that made John's skin crawl. The voice began to speak, telling John of its plans for him. It spoke of unspeakable horrors, of a fate worse than death. John felt himself slipping into madness, unable to resist the voice's hypnotic spell. Days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months. John was trapped in the darkness, listening to the voice's twisted tales. He tried to resist, tried to fight back, but it was no use. The voice was too strong, too alluring. And then, one day, the voice stopped. John was left in silence, his mind shattered and broken. He didn't know how long he had been trapped in the darkness, didn't know if he would ever be able to escape. But as the days passed, John began to feel a strange energy building within him. It was a power that he had never felt before, a power that he knew could be used to fight back against the darkness. And so, John began to fight. He fought with every ounce of strength he had left, pushing back against the voice that had kept him captive for so long. At first, it seemed like a losing battle. But John was determined, and he refused to give up. Slowly but surely, John began to feel the darkness lifting. The voice grew weaker and weaker, until it was nothing more than a faint whisper in the back of his mind. Then, one day, John felt the darkness lift completely. He opened his eyes, blinking against the bright light. He was lying on the ground, surrounded by trees and grass. For a moment, John couldn't believe what he was seeing. Had it all been a dream? Had he imagined the creature, the voice, the darkness? But then he saw it. The creature was standing in front of him, its eyes burning with a fierce intensity. It was the same creature that had attacked him in Millville, the same creature that had dragged him into the darkness. But this time, John was ready. He could feel the power within him, the power that he had gained from his time in the darkness. With a sudden burst of energy, he lunged at the creature, his hands glowing with an otherworldly light. The creature howled in pain, stumbling backwards. John pressed his advantage, striking the creature again and again with his newfound power. It was a fierce battle, one that lasted for what seemed like hours. But in the end, John emerged victorious. The creature lay at his feet, its body broken and lifeless. John stood there for a moment, catching his breath. He had done it. He had defeated the creature, had emerged from the darkness stronger than ever. But even as he stood there, basking in his victory, John knew that his battle was not yet over. There were other creatures out there, other horrors lurking in the darkness. And John was determined to find them all. He was a paranormal investigator, after all. It was his job to face the darkness, to stand against the things that went bump in the night. And he would do it, no matter what horrors lay ahead. For John knew that he had a power within him, a power that could overcome any darkness. And he was ready to use it to save the world from the things that lurked in the shadows.